circle, Alyson.
Why, thank you.
So Forbes was early on with programmatic, right? I mean, so how many years are you guys into basically programmatic as an important part of the business?
We're probably around 5 or 6 at this point. I think around 4 is when we really kind of changed and optimized our strategy to get started where we are now. I think before that there was a lot of experiments that, we were trying, and we were trying to figure it out like everybody else. But
sounds like it didn't work out.
Not everything works out, and that's key with this stuff.
Exactly. So let's talk about it. So what is the sort of Forbes focus right now when it comes to programmatic?
So our focus, we're looking at programmatic as a channel just like any other channel. I heard you mention remnant before. That's a word that we kind of cut from our vocabulary 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
And that's because we don't like to think of it that way. It's not second tier. It's not below anything else. It's another way that our advertisers can buy us. Mm-hmm. And I think we really try to focus on that, and the fact that we have RFPs coming in, we have advertisers coming to us, and we just want them to buy us in the most efficient way possible for them.
So what's the challenge of getting to that point? Because it all sounds, very, very practical, and
Sure.
we could all agree with it, but then there are difficulties.
There absolutely are difficulties. I think you have to start with just being open to trying different things. I think it was about 4 years ago that we made the decision to become fully transparent across all the exchanges. We removed our block list. We basically let everyone buy us, and that at that point was a really big thing. We had, a lot of nervousness in the company. A lot of people, I think this is where some of those myths come in. All of a sudden you have salespeople who are saying, why are my advertisers going to buy through me if they can buy for less somewhere else?
How important was that education piece when it came to the direct sales force?
Very important. That was a huge piece. And I think until you have that direct sales team on board, it's going to be very difficult to manage your programmatic sales, because for us, the communication between the programmatic sellers and the direct sellers is imperative.
So two different sellers.
Two different sellers, predominantly. I mean, if our direct sellers, that's their strength. They're our brand, and our core business, how it always was, is kind of what they're trained in. They're now learning more of the programmatic stuff, but generally when they get a request for programmatic, that's when we bring in someone who's specially working only in programmatic, and that person is kind of the expert that helps them kind of quarterback along that sale.
Is that like an in-between approach, do you think? I mean, is that like sort of the long term, or is like the future salesperson has to be able to do both, I would guess?
I think a salesperson absolutely needs to be able to speak to both. I don't know if they need to be fluent in both. I mean, that's working very well for us right now. So, but we also have a very intelligent sales team that can absolutely speak on their own to the programmatic capabilities that we have. It's kind of just when you start getting more in the weeds, that's when you bring in someone who's specifically focused on that.
So they know enough to be dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you talked about not like looking at it as second-class inventory. How does that affect sort of the Forbes waterfall? Like, I mean, are you looking at all demand sources as everyone's equal?
Yes. Yeah, the easy answer to that is yes. We've basically set up our kind of tech stack. There almost isn't a waterfall in the sense that we allow everything to compete together, and we're really optimizing based on price. So we want the highest price to win that impression whenever possible.
Okay. So how does that affect, like, how much is going through like private marketplaces? Is private marketplaces an important part of the strategy?
Private marketplaces is becoming a much more important part. I think over probably the last year, we've seen a big increase in that specifically. Mainly, I think a lot of our direct advertisers are now coming with an RFP that says, we want to put a portion of this into programmatic, which is definitely new over the past, 6 months or a year. So now that's when we're kind of getting more of those private marketplaces involved, and the preferred deals and private auctions.
But you don't necessarily give that preference over sort of open exchange bids?
We work in AdX, so we have DFP and AdX, so it gets the priority that it gets in the ad server. So predominantly a lot of our deals that aren't happening direct are coming in through Google.
Okay, so how about header bidding?
Header bidding, it's a huge thing, it's the new thing. Yeah.
I knew this big. I went back to we did this WTF series about different like ad tech terms.
Yeah.
And I went back to it today just to read up, just to bone up, and it was shared like 4,000 times. A lot of people are looking for
there you go.
information on header bidding.
Yeah. Well, I think header bidding is essentially recreating Google's dynamic allocation outside of DFP and allowing different partners, different demand partners in. So I think that for us was huge. We were super excited about that, and we've been doing it for a couple months now.
So is this just a small tactical change, or is it part of something more strategic?
I think it has I think it can eventually be something way more strategic.
How so? Explain that.
Well, I think it's, AdX and dynamic allocation very much changed the way I think publishers looked at their inventory and helped to kind of lift that remnant into a space that it was, equal to direct. And I think that's what we're doing now with more than just AdX. So it's great to be able to get other partners in there to do the same thing and to be able to compete. AdX is no longer getting that, the first look and the last look. You're letting other partners in as well.
Yeah. Do you think Google will like that?
I'm sure they'll have a solution.
They want all the looks.
Yeah.
So what about latency? Are you worried at all of this impacting site performance?
Yeah. I think a lot of people are very concerned about that. The solution that we've implemented is a server-side header bidding. So we've partnered with Media.net to basically have them manage all of our header bidding. So we're only putting their JavaScript pixel on our page. And then they have access to our DFP API. And through that connection, they are kind of managing which of our partners is most likely to buy at this moment on this page. And so we're not experiencing that latency. And I think that's a thing that publishers should think about.
So I had mentioned before that sort of just one line of JavaScript thing earlier, and I know a lot of publishers can sort of deal with that or can relate to that.
Totally.
How does Forbes, figure out what works for the monetization side, but the overall experience? Because it's getting a lot of attention now. And I think rightly, probably.
No, totally. User experience has to be prominent for everybody because once that starts going downhill, you're going to lose your users. Absolutely. So I don't think you can say that user experience is something that only your editorial or your product side should be focused on. It's everybody's problem, and advertisers want a good user experience just as much as everybody else. So we have a team that's constantly, reviewing the site, making sure that our user experience is working before we will release any, new JavaScript tag on the page. We're doing tons and tons of tests to make sure that it doesn't, make the experience too bad, that it's not, pulling down our page load time or anything like that.
But you bring together all sides, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So we do have a daily meeting that we're basically bringing together people from every team. We have programmatic, sales, edit, product, tech, QA. It's kind of a collection of stakeholders from many different departments, and any big change that we do, that team has to review. And so I think that's been a really great thing for our company, just kind of getting all these people together. Everyone understands where we're coming from. We're all kind of unified and understand why we're making this change and what are the consequences of it and what are the effects and the pros and the cons. And so it's helped us all kind of understand why we need a single JavaScript pixel on the page, and in some cases why we don't.
So are you moving beyond display when it comes to programmatic? Are you doing video through that?
We're kind of in the process of building up our video strategy, so we're definitely going to be growing that. For I think a long time we were primarily focused on banners, and so I think over the next year or so, definitely in 2016, that's going to be a focus for us.
But right now, not a lot of video.
Right now, we're not doing a ton of it.
And is that just because the demand is such, like through direct channels, that you don't need to? Or?
Yeah. Our video product is almost 100% sold out for the majority of time, so it doesn't leave that much room for others.
So I had mentioned earlier sort of the drumbeat of bad stuff when it comes to sort of viewability concerns or ad fraud, malware, ad blocking. Where do those sort of four horsemen of the ad tech apocalypse, where do they rank as far as an order of importance for Forbes?
Yeah, viewability is something that we've been working on. You know, we've been aware of and kind of preparing for probably almost 4 years now. We partnered with Moat back in 2011 and have been, you know, watching our viewability, optimizing our site for viewability. So I think that's something that we're actually really excited that the rest of the industry has
what does
finally
that mean,
gotten here.
optimizing viewability? Is that just like you're moving the ads up the page?
Not just up the page. I mean, we've done a lot of different tests about where the ads can go to get the best viewability possible, how we can load them, a lot of different things, just seeing what gets us the highest viewability across all our banners, and also just understanding which placement has which viewability and what we should run there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also a matter of just knowing your site. So I think by the time that, you know, the masses kind of leaped onto that and we started getting the requests from the agencies, I think we were pretty prepared for that. Mm-hmm. So that one we're definitely always conscious of, and we kind of have moved from impressions being our, you know, focus to viewable impressions being the thing that we're always looking at. I mean, as far as
how about ad
fraud,
quality? Well,
ad
quality, let's just
yeah.
let's group that around just ad quality.
Okay.
I mean, how are you approaching that? I'm sure you get like a bunch of complaints from editorial product, like why is this on our site? Like,
we get a few. I think though that meeting that I told you about, I think it helps a lot because the people on the editorial product side feel more like they understand why we're doing these things, and that you know, it's also a time where we share industry news. There's often a Digiday article that's shared with the group.
Perfect. You should do that all
Yeah.
You should have this meeting several times a day.
But I think it's also just helping each side of the business understand what the norm is and what other people are doing. And, you know, I'm learning things about the editorial product side that I didn't know as well. So I think with that information sharing, it kind of helps to understand, you know, what you know, ads that maybe like take over your screen, something like that, and what the purpose of it is, and how that can actually be a really cool experience if you partner with an advertiser who's willing to let you kind of create it with them.
Yeah, sometimes. Depends on your definition of cool. Or the auto app install redirects. It's a very popular one. Have you had that?
We actually don't have many of those, no.
No?
We haven't had that problem much.
And have you sort of had an incident where malware has been distributed on your site through a programmatically placed ad?
I don't think we've had the problem specific to programmatic. I mean, there's been things that come up, and I think they're dealt with on a one-off basis, but it's not something that happens a lot, and it's not, you know, we've put in place a number of different ways to make sure that that doesn't happen.
So how about ad blocking? It's getting a lot of attention lately.
Is
this much to do about nothing, or is this a wake-up call?
I mean, I don't think it's much to do about nothing. I think it's hard for anyone to say that when you look at the percentages of people who are ad blocking. But I mean, it's something, we have a number of different, you know, responses to ad blocking that we're in the process of testing. We haven't kind of determined one or what the best approach is.
Are you going to try to just cut people off? Is that one?
I don't know about that.
No?
We're testing a lot of different things. That is not one of them at the moment. But I think publishers really have to think about it. What is the value of a user, and how do you want that user to experience your site?
So it's a sizable enough percentage of Forbes visitors that you have to address
It's for sure a sizable amount. Yeah.
But I mean, there's also one argument that they're not very valuable to advertisers anyway. I mean, these are the hardcore ad avoiders, and so...
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting perspective, because it could also be that kind of young, tech-focused person that we actually have a lot of people coming to us for that. I think the person who knows about an ad blocker, kind of knowing that shows they have a certain pool of knowledge that an advertiser might actually be very interested in.
Yeah, we wrote a story about how ad blockers became like an ad targeting segment.
Right, yeah, you wish you could target
perfect
that.
for this industry. It's like, you want to get rid of the ads? Now you're more valuable. So give me three, I want to open up to questions, but give me your sort of top three myths that you run into on a day-to-day basis when it comes to programmatic, either internally or externally from, like, you know, say vendors who are coming at you.
Sure. I think day-to-day basis is tough. I do think there's still, number one, a perception in some cases that programmatic is going to be like low-budget CD ads, and that's not the case. we've come very far past that. Number two, I would say.
But that is a myth you get internally from folks, or?
Sometimes internally, but externally as well. I mean, I think it's more just the overall perception.
Okay.
Number two, that's a tough one. I would say internally, I think people think that, and externally as well, that programmatic is literally all machine to machine, that there is no person involved. And so I think sometimes helping people understand that like there are people involved here is a big thing.
Well, some of the biggest programmatic ad companies have like 1,000 people. So
right,
they
exactly.
must be doing something.
Yeah, it's not just 2 computers. There's a lot of people involved in that process.
On that, let me just, before you get
sure.
to third, do you find though that like, we just did a programmatic summit in Europe and in Rome last week. And one of the things that European publishers are talking about a lot is that very issue that it's so manual. Yeah. Like that they need so many, the resources needed to manage programmatic is such a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, we have a fairly lean team doing it. I mean, I think the resources are far less than you needed to manage it maybe a year ago. Right. So we're getting better. So I think as that progression keeps happening, we'll see a lot of improvement. But it's a fair point. I mean, it sounds like it should be all computers, and it's not.
Yeah. And what's number 3?
Number 3, I think initially there was an idea that programmatic was going to replace a direct sales team. And so I think that's kind of a thing that we still hear sometimes. Mm-hmm. And there's a little bit of that, like, well, why are they buying us programmatically? Like, I'm pitching them. And so there's
definitely. But you're still selling some, like a good amount of display, just display through direct.
Yes, 100%. We're selling a significant amount of direct that way. Yeah. So, but I think it's there'll still be an email that says like, hey, I didn't think they were running on our site. And so I think that goes back to the learning process and kind of helping people understand like, no, they're not running through us, but they're running a programmatic campaign, or they're running through AdX, or whoever they're running from. And that's okay. And it was a big thing for us when we kind of did a lot after we became transparent and removed our block list. We every single day and week and month we were checking to make sure that we hadn't had an advertiser say like, we're not going to buy you any more direct. We're moving all programmatic, and we haven't. To this day, it's never happened. Okay. So I think it's just keeping an eye on that stuff and helping people to understand that. These are 2 channels that actually work quite well together.
Are you using that for like lead generation for your like direct sales team? Meaning like if you're seeing like running a lot indirect? Yeah,
to an extent. Definitely to an extent we do. We'll say, hey, we noticed that this is being bought quite a bit this month. You might want to say something to them.
Yeah.
But I mean, more, it's just another revenue channel for us. It's just another way to make money.
Okay. Yeah. Want to open it up to questions? We have a couple microphones. Get to ask the first question of the event. Who's it going to be? This one over here. Hold on. Mike's on his way. I see.
Hi. Have you guys started thinking about lean ad principles at all? And if so, how is Forbes kind of planning on applying them in 2016?
Yeah, we've definitely started thinking about it. I think it's something that, to be honest, we'll probably focus on more in the next couple of weeks. But I think it's important for everybody to be focusing on that and to make sure that we're all following the same guidelines and are, helping to make sure that the web overall is not, kind of polluted and is not a bad experience for people, because we don't want our industry to have that tied to it. So it's definitely important, yeah.
Okay. So one up front, Mike's on his way.
Just wondering if all ads are competing against each other, direct sold and programmatic, can you have guaranteed inventory, or does that change the very nature?
They are all competing against each other, and yes, we still have guaranteed inventory. I would say 99% of the time they're all competing against each other. When we know our inventory well enough to kind of know what we can and can't sell from a direct standpoint. And then when we do see something kind of potentially not delivering that was sold on a guaranteed basis, we have ways to kind of make sure that it does. You know, we can overpower that.
Yep, over here.
You may have mentioned this, but are you partnered with any DSP partners to actually do sort of an audience extension, or does all of your programmatic run within your owned and operated sites? And then if so, how was that vetting process? What was the consideration process like?
Right now, it's all on our owned and operated sites.
Are you looking into that? Is that something?
Not
or
at the
no?
moment.
No? Okay.
No.
Anyone else? Okay, cool.
Cool.
Alyson,
Well,
thank you so much.
Yeah,
Appreciate
great.
it. Okay.